AWS On Air. We are live at the New York City Summit. And if you don't like the sound of having data in all different places, trying to figure out how do you make sense of it, then this is a session that you want to stick around for, because we're going to be talking about a brand new service that came out called AWS Entity Resolution. So let's do some intros of who we've got on this amazing panel. My name is Jillian Ford, and we've got the one and only AM Grabelny.
Yeah, thankfully there is only one for all of us, me included. I'm AM Grabelny. I'm a developer advocate here at AWS, and I thought I felt the presence of an entity with us. But I wasn't sure which one it was.
A real entity.
Yeah. I could sense it. Anyway, please introduce yourselves.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Shobit. I lead product for AWS Entity Resolution. I've been with AWS for quite a few years. Very excited to be with you guys today.
And hello, everyone. I'm Puneet Shah. I'm the service SA for this new service, AWS Entity Resolution. I work with customers, helping them use this service and really take power of it.
And Puneet, you're going to be leading us through the demo later, too. So
he gets to do all the cool stuff.
Very important. He's probably the most important person on the panel.
Why are we even here?
Jillian and I could probably leave.
Yeah.
You can
Me
probably
too.
stay.
Yeah. I was the entity you felt before.
That's the presence.
That's it. Yes.
That's it. OK. All right. So speaking of entities.
All right.
Speaking of resolutions. Way past New Year, so we can't talk about that. But what are we talking about with this? What are entities, and what are we trying to resolve about them?
Sure. I think first we have to take a step back and really understand what customers told us, right? So we've been working on this service for more than 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
And the foundation of this has always been data quality, right? There are studies which says that 94% of organizations have more than 10 to 30% of duplicate records, right? And duplicate data sets. And that is a pain that all data analysts have felt, right? I mean, whether you are training ML models, whether you are building customer experiences, whether you're doing anything, you need consumer data, you need clean consumer data. And that's what this service does. This service goes and cleans up your data within a few minutes. It just takes a few clicks to get started, and you can use the power of rule and machine learning-based matching for linking and matching records.
Does someone need to know machine learning to actually be able to use it?
No. So I think that's basically the core tenet of our service. It has to be very easy to use for the business user. So if you are out there and you use quick sites or you use any kind of analytics engine and you want to start just having cleaner data into that engine, you can get onto the AWS Management Console right now and within a few clicks get started with cleaning up your data.
Shobit, so as a dev, working on bunch of different systems and things like this. In the abstract, I can envision, I think, what you're talking about here, where there's dozens of different databases, and data about each of these things that I'm representing in my application are spread across all these different areas, and making decisions based off of that data is hard when you don't have the full picture. But do you have specific examples from industries, from workloads that could maybe better illustrate what's going on here?
So let's just take an example of customer experience. Like a lot of our customers are marketeers or advertisers who are building great customer experiences. And every time that you have a customer interacting with your brand, you have more than 5 to 10 channels they're interacting with you on. They're talking to you over chat. They're talking to you over a contact center. They're talking to you probably through a physical retail store that they drop by. They're talking to you on your website visit. And every time that they come in, you cannot expect them to give the same set of details. Sometimes they will give you their name, sometimes they'll give you their email address, sometimes they'll give you their phone number, sometimes they'll not do any of that. They'll just be a device. So, and brands want to make sense of that, right?
Yeah.
And the reason they want to make sense of that is they want to give you a personalized experience so that when you require that Nike shoes or any pair of shoes at the right time, you can get that information. So that's like a use case which we have heard the most from our customers, is how you can resolve these different silos of data across these channels and create a unified ID that can represent a consumer across all of these interactions.
Well, Matt, when you explained it like that, I mean, that's a ton of use cases, really. I mean, I know you just said the retail example, but I mean, there's a lot of people who are probably thinking, hey, maybe I don't know, health example. You've got health data in all different sources, but it sounds like
Absolutely. Horizontally, we have seen interest from healthcare companies, financial services. I'll take you another example of product reconciliation. So take an example of inventory management, right? And you have an operations team, and you have different vendors who are sending you their inventory from different places, and you have a centralized unit. Now, each vendor can use their own product SKU codes, can have their own sense of what are the transactions, and each of that might not be the same in terms of the string values. And what the service does is that you just throw all the operations data at us, and it can help you go and deduplicate that for you.
Wow.
So the same tenet of deduplication is applied across customer experience, financial services, operations, ML model training, and so on and so forth.
I can imagine that matching and linking data sets is easy, or else if it was, there probably wouldn't be a problem, right? That we came and solved.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that the Entity Resolution service is solving this, right?
Yeah.
How do I configure this? What's out there for me to connect it to, and how hard is it to connect to?
Yeah. So today our customers use a lot of SQL procedures. So a lot of SQL language is being used actually to build. I mean, customers spend like months of time building like these SQL procedures, as well as sometimes you even need to hire like machine learning teams, because like the problem with data is that they are conflicting identifiers. Like you might have an identifier X to represent in one data set and an identifier Y in another data set.
Wait, you're telling me that teams don't just unequivocally use the same unique identifiers across the board for every... That's wild. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of conflicting identifiers and the data silos then percolates for you to write all of these complex logic. And what Entity Resolution does for you is that it just takes all of that undifferentiated heavy lifting out, right? So you just point us to the data, which already is in your S3 bucket. If your data is already crawled in Glue, all you need to do is tell us how do you want to match the data and where do you want us to write the results. We will match that data as per your techniques. We already have pre-configured techniques as well that you can use, and the output will be there within a few minutes. Wow. And then you can quickly start looking at like, this is the percentage of duplicate data as I have, and what do I do about it?
I want to see it. I don't know about
what
you.
do you think? A demo?
Yeah, I think it's time.
Let's do a demo.
Let's do it.
All right.
Absolutely. Okay.
Take us there.
So there are a couple of different scenarios that Shobit was just describing. We'll take one as an example and look how the service within minutes can really set you up in order to do that, right? So for example, now the service is live. You go to the AWS console, you search for Entity Resolution, and you come up here. You start by schema mapping. So this is kind of your first step in the entire process. This is kind of where you're telling the service that, hey, this is where my data is, and I want to bring this data into the service and then let the service run its magic of resolving entities out of it. So in order for you to do that, you click on the Create Schema Mapping. You start by creating, let's say I just give it some name. You start by selecting where your data resides, what your data characteristics are. So for example, the moment you pointed the service now to where your data is in some S3 location crawled as a Glue table, it can automatically list down all the different attributes that your data has. These are different characteristics of your data, like here's address information in my data, here's name information, email, phone number, and so forth, right? One of the...
Oh, wait, just hold on one second. So that data, it populated that based off of your data set. Like you didn't have to... Wow. That's powerful.
So if your data is sitting in Glue, like we just quickly crawl and tell you what other columns exist.
Wow.
And then you can just like quickly pick which ones you want to use for matching, which Puneet will show you now.
Now, once you have your data there, the system asks you which columns do you want to use for matching, right? So for example, you may have hundreds of columns in your data set, but not all are going to be part of your resolution. So in order to tell the system that, hey, these are some of the columns I want to use for my resolution, like let's say basic address information. I have street address, city, state, zip. I want to use my email address. I want to use first name, last name. So you select whatever appropriate columns there are as part of your use case, and then you choose to just proceed next. This is the step where you're telling the service that, hey, my column is address 1 on my side, but really it maps to something that is street address 1 on the service side. So you're essentially telling the service that here are the columns that I bring to bear for resolution. And since you already have an opinion about all the different entities that you want to resolve into, just point me to that and I'll pretty much take care of that. Right? So this is kind of a mapping screen. I won't go through it right now, but essentially you look at all these different elements that the service automatically identifies from the data that you bring in for resolution. Oh. Now, this is kind of a one-time activity. You don't need to do this unless you're bringing in newer data sets. But once you have your data set kind of mapped out into the service, the next step is creating the matching workflow. So this is where the magic happens, right? Now, imagine a situation where your data is there, you already mapped it. Now, the next step you want to do is tell the service, hey, now that you know my data well, why don't you go ahead and just run either a machine learning algorithm on it and tell me all the different entities you could resolve to, or run a couple of rules on it. So we do deterministic rule-based as well as machine learning. So it's an option that you can choose. And again, it's just a matter of clicks, really. There's nothing more than that. So you don't need to be a data scientist. You don't need to be an expert with rule engines, how they work, none of that. You really just toggle buttons on the screen and you're all set.
It'd be as simple as something like what? Like, give me all the customers you found that live in this zip code, right?
Yep.
And that's a deterministic rule, I imagine.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And then, the more impactful, or not impactful, but the more complex things would be handled by the ML.
Exactly.
So let's talk about variations, right? So for example, when I go to, let's say, a reservation online, I spell my name differently. When I'm checking in into a travel counter, my passport name could be very different, right? So you have variations.
I'm one of these people. I have polluted all kinds of people's data sets with AM because that's not my legal name. My legal name is Alan Michael, and I shortened it to AM because I've had many people across the years say, that's your name? Can I call you just one or the other? Can I call you Alan? No, you can't.
Or just morning, AM.
Yeah,
morning.
AM. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And actually, the service helps you identify entities based off that as well.
That's interesting. So different names.
Different names, emails,
but shared characteristics.
Shared characteristics is important, right?
Things like phonetics and like everything of that nature, the service can take care of.
Okay.
Like for example, phonetically, if it's differently pronounced and it's written differently, the service will take care
Oh,
of it.
Or something
cool.
like my address doesn't change, but like Alan Michael or AM might show up across the board in different data sets. But since my address is the same, they can map. You can map that AM and Alan Michael are the same. Entity.
Correct. That's cool.
Yeah.
Entity.
And even if there are variations in your address, for example, we can still identify email addresses, phone numbers. So, so any of your information that you bring to bear for resolution, if there are variations, we can still identify. And we'll see how, right? So So in the matching workflow, you start by creating some name. You again point to the data set. You give some service access. So one of the cool things about the service is security, right? So when we speak about data now, especially in this world where you have GDPR and California laws about how to protect the privacy, it's very important that the data is secured and it's the movement of the data is minimal. So we come to you where your data is. So you point us to your S3 location where you are holding your data. You don't need to upload the data to us or some external APIs. Right? We come to you, we pick up the data.
Wow.
The data is always going to be encrypted while it's in transit, while it's going through the whole processing chain. And that's what the role here essentially tells you. You are giving us the permission to come and read your data to process. Now, in step 2, this is where you really are selecting either you want to do a deterministic rule-based or just a machine learning-based matching, right? And like I was saying, it's literally a toggle. Like just toggle between the two. You don't need to be an expert on either or. SAs like myself, developers like myself who have been building SQL for resolving entities months, we find this very, very exciting. Like, hey, you literally can do this in a matter of minutes, right? So again, let's just look at rule-based as an instance. Because the service now knows the attributes that you are bringing in, it actually creates the rules for you.
Wow.
You don't need to, again, figure out what kind of rules should I use. Nope. We eliminate all of that for you. We want to make it an extremely easy process. We create the rules for you. Here we created 9 different rules for you. Like, hey, you can use all of these different attributes in combination to do the resolution.
Yeah, and then if you want to go and customize, like we also understand that builders of AWS like to play with the buttons, right? To go and configure stuff, right? And you can always do that. You can move these roles up and down. You can change attributes. You can add attributes. If your attributes are not listed here, you can bring in custom attributes. So this is pretty scalable to meet your needs if that's what you want.
Very cool.
I'm just curious. So what happens when you bring in a new data set? Do you have to create new rules? Do you?
So that's a great question. So let's say you bring in a new data set, right? So first is, of course, you'll have to go through the mapping phase, but given that's a one-time thing. The next thing is you, again, point to the workflow saying, hey, here's an additional data set. And as part of the service right now, we can actually support 15 different data sources. So you can bring up to 15 different data sources, and you say, hey, here's an additional data source. The system will automatically scan, adjust the rules, and say, okay, if this is the new data source you want to do, I think maybe the order of these kind of attributes and rules will make sense now that there are more elements that I can use for resolution.
Yeah, and for every data input, right? I mean, one data set can also keep changing, right? You get new customers onboarding every day. You have new website signups happening every day. So you have the ability to process incremental processing. So like whenever you have new data, within a few minutes, we'll pick up the new data, we'll process for you, we'll create it into the match IDs. So we make sure that your workflow is up to date in near real time.
Wow, really impressive.
Right.
And some of the use cases, like Shobit was mentioning about marketeers, this is something that we often hear. Like once entity resolution has done its magic and it has resolved all the different entities, let's say if I go to a Nike website now, the marketeers can actually find out more about who I am because the entity resolution service has told them the entire lineage of, okay, this is Puneet Shah on my website. He was here 3 days ago. He has already purchased something else. So I can create that lineage and do some kind of personalization experiences for the visitors as well on the website.
Yeah.
Wow.
So going back to the demo, so these are all rules. Again, you can change them or just go with the default that the system offers. You hit next. And then you simply say where you want the service to write the output to. Again, your S3 bucket. Again, within the tenet of security, we want to make sure that everything's secured. We write into your S3 bucket. We can use your keys to encrypt the data as well so that there's complete end-to-end security. You simply select browse. Let's say you give some output location here. And what's even cool is that we can hash the data for you on output. Now, so remember, we are in the space of PII. It's sensitive information. We don't want email addresses of people just flowing around in clear text. So the service does offer that capability that, hey, I want to go out and hash this. Well, let's just do that. Let's just select email address, and let's just say, hash this one for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? So this is kind of setting up the entire pipeline. So if you see it's really 4 simple stages, or 3 rather, you start by saying, here's my data, what matching technique I want to use, and then this is the location where you should just write the output to. And if for some reason I want to say, you know what, I don't want to do rule-based, let's just switch to machine learning. Cool, let's do that. Go to step 2. Just toggle the button. You're set. Nothing changes. The output and everything remains the same. That's literally just a change of a couple of radio buttons.
Wow.
So,
okay. I think you are an entity, actually. That seems a little supernatural that you could do that.
and certainly, this is a great service. As an output, what we do is we start matching these different entities, resolve them, give it to you. You can further leverage that output, take it to any kind of downstream applications, create your golden record. Yep.
Awesome.
It's really cool. And I like that it seems that you could pick and choose which columns maybe you want to be able to actually be able to analyze here, especially as people are starting to think about really what are the best ways to really optimize their data, knowing that they have that option of, oh, hey, maybe I don't necessarily need to scan the entire data set.
Right.
I can pick and choose.
I think another cool part is like once you have ran a workflow, and Puneet can show you some workflow that he has already written in the past, but you can also see metrics. Like, I mean, I know our customers love metrics, right? And they love that, okay, well, how many records did I have? How many duplicates I found? So you can see all of those metrics here that Puneet can show you.
Unique records, yeah, that's incredible. I mean, look, let's be honest, right? Data normalization, it's kind of boring, right? Like it takes time away from people who should be doing other things that are more impactful to the business. This is incredible, right?
Yes.
Like, and what I loved hearing too throughout the entire thing was I'm maintaining control over all of my data.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, that's really important too.
Absolutely.
And I love that you all have considered that in building this.
Yeah, I think just to summarize, I would say like the three key benefits that our customers have told us. We have ran this service in beta. The 3 key benefits has always been the first and foremost is ease of use. Right? It's like they're publishers, they're agencies, they're marketers who have told us, man, it took us months, it took us a few minutes. Now that's great. That's job well done. That's ease of use. The second is the configurability that you just talked about. It's like it looks simple over, but like it's really complicated if I can go and move things around.
Incredibly powerful.
Exactly.
That, like you said, just takes people months to do, and is not work that is like, something that they probably should be doing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Or are excited about doing
Exactly.
either, right?
Yeah.
But it is incredibly
Important.
important
Yes.
because you can't do anything before you normalize your data.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So second is configurability we talked about. And third one, which is coming up a lot more, is security. It's like
Yeah.
data security is like minimize my data movement, keep it in the same region as you're processing it, keep it encrypted, keep it hashed. So hopefully with all these three benefits, we can help customers.
I love
think
it.
so.
Where do I get started?
Yep.
Just go to AWS Management Console and type AWS Entity Resolution,
Easy.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy.
and you're good to go.
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
All right.
Puneet, thank you for the demo. Shabat, thank you
you.
for joining us and giving
course.
us all those great examples. Jillian, always
The
wonderful
best.
to host with you. Yeah.
Always.
Always. You, stick around, because we'll be back with more content here live from the New York City Summit. We'll see you there.
Cheers.